Islamic schools, mainly serving British South Asian communities, are outperforming national averages at GCSE and primary level while charging around £4,000 a year. Researchers say that 86% are rated good or outstanding by Ofsted and argue that these schools are combining strong academic results with values-based education and community engagement. Well, joining us now is Dr. Mary Hunter, who is a senior researcher at Equi and a specialist in UK South Asia relations. Welcome to the programme, Dr. Mary.
Thank you so much for having me on, and I hope you're well.
I'm very well indeed. All the better for speaking to yourself. Let's start off then. I guess, a lot of these schools, as I said in the intro there, serve British South Asian communities. How significant is their role in social mobility within those communities?
Yes, so Equi's research on this particular report kind of focused on independent Islamic faith schools outperforming national averages while also charging lower annual fees. So in this way, they are playing a really important role in social mobility by making a quality education available to families who might not otherwise afford it in the mainstream independent sector. So what's really interesting here was the average annual fee per pupil for the Islamic schools we featured in this report, as you mentioned, was just over £4,000, as compared to the £19,000 fee of the average independent school. And this is also significantly less than the funding allocated for each child in the state sector of just over £8,000. And we found that the work of these schools has a really important and positive impact on British Muslim and South Asian communities. But we also think that the rest of us can actually learn from these schools' achievements. And there are some really important leanings and learnings in here for government. So, for example, the fact that these schools do educate the children of families which are not wealthy also highlights the challenge presented by the introduction of VAT on lower fee independent schools. And one head teacher that we interviewed for the report said that some families could no longer afford to send their children to the schools due to the introduction of VAT. So the policy could have a damaging effect on social mobility, and we suggest that the government consider a VAT exemption for lower fee independent schools of all faiths and none.
One of the big things at the moment, especially when it seems like we're living in very kind of divisive times, whether that be politically or otherwise, is this whole idea of British values, whatever that kind of means, I guess, to each individual. How do these kind of schools balance so-called British values with their own kind of cultural and religious identities?
Yeah, so I think this was one of the most important findings that came out of Equi's research, and the 10 schools that we featured emphasised the importance of a values-driven education. So British and Islamic values are often one and the same, such as the rule of law and mutual respect and tolerance. And so the schools do a really good job of actually balancing them within the curricula. There's an emphasis within these schools on being active British citizens who are both respectful and outward-looking. And this is reinforced through visits to places of worship, charity work, and societies that encourage both leadership and community spirit. And one of the primary schools we featured in our report is actually based in Lancashire, called Al-Ikhlas Primary School, and it exceeded the national averages in the percentage of its students meeting the expected standards. And the school also had the lowest fees of all the schools we featured. And often Ofsted was describing how students talked confidently about what British values mean and how they aligned with their faith. And we think that this challenges widespread assumptions that Islamic schools create insular or segregated communities. And instead, our research at Equi found that these schools produce well-rounded British Muslim students who are members both of their faith community but also their local community.
Amazing. Are there parallels with, in terms of the schools here, are there parallels with faith-based education in South Asia as well?
So the report that we produced at Equi wasn't really designed to sort of compare education here in the UK with that in South Asia. But really, we don't have to go as far as South Asia because the UK has its own strong tradition of faith schools. the vast majority of these are Christian faith schools, and Islamic faith schools don't always have the best reputation. But the research we conducted at Equi shows the positive impact they actually have on the children and their communities, and that there's actually a lot to learn from these schools.
I mean, you've touched on this already, but tell me a little bit about kind of how the report challenges kind of common misconceptions about Islamic schools.
Yeah, so, I mean, as you're talking about the kind of division within society, you know, British Muslims often get a bad press, and I think Equi's research is helping to paint a more accurate picture, showing that actually British Muslims make very valuable contributions to the country, and that society as a whole either already does benefit from them or can benefit even more from them in the future. So with this report, we wanted to show how the successes of Islamic schools in England might be supported and replicated by schools of all faiths and none to improve education, but also social cohesion.
Amazing. And finally, before we let you go, what are the findings of this report? What did they say about the contribution of British South Asians to UK education?
So, as mentioned, our work at Equi kind of often looks at the contributions of British Muslims to society, and this includes within the education sector. So our findings speak to the value brought to society by British Muslims, so that's not only British Muslims benefiting, but also non-Muslims. And this obviously includes the work of South Asians themselves. Our report shows that British Islamic schools are defying expectations by performing incredibly well with lower fees. And at the GCSE level, all 10 schools we featured in this report exceeded the national averages across several categories, and the same was true at the primary level. So given how the fees are so low, these are very impressive results that we think deserve to be acknowledged and learned from.
Amazing. Dr. Mary Hunter, Senior Researcher at Equi and a specialist in UK South Asia relations. Thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Let's move on to